So there was this absolutely fiery speech in the Indian Parliament recently, and it was all centered around the national song Vande Mataram. In this explainer, we're going to break down the arguments piece by piece to really get what was said and why it caused such an uproar. And, it all really starts with one question.
Right, so that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth does a song with such deep historical roots suddenly become the flashpoint for a massive, heated political debate right now? That's the puzzle we're going to unpack together.
Okay, so the speech we're digging into, from MP Mahua Moitra, it comes out swinging. Right from the get-go, she makes this pretty bold accusation that this whole debate isn't actually about the song. She argues it's a calculated political tactic to distract everyone from, well, bigger problems.
So what are these so-called real issues she's talking about? Well, she lays them out, one by one. Youth unemployment soaring over 20%, the capital's air quality crisis hitting levels over 800, serious disputes over funds for the states, and a huge, controversial citizenship process. Her whole point is that the Vande Mataram debate is a convenient smokescreen to avoid talking about this stuff.
And then she drops the why. What's the alleged motive here? According to her, the timing is anything but a coincidence. She claims this whole debate was specifically cooked up as a political strategy with an eye on the 2026 West Bengal elections.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Moitra points out what she sees as a huge irony. Just 2 weeks before this big debate, a parliamentary bulletin had apparently described shouting Vande Mataram in the House as indecorous and non-serious. For her, that's a massive contradiction to the government's sudden claim that this is an urgent national issue.
All right, so after that opening volley, the speech takes a sharp turn, right into a history lesson. To push back against the current narrative, she dives deep into the song's actual origins, taking us all the way back to 19th century Bengal.
And this timeline really shows you the song's incredible journey. It didn't just appear overnight. It starts out as this short two-stanza hymn in 1875. Then it gets expanded for a famous novel. It's sung publicly for the first time by the legendary poet Rabindranath Tagore himself. It becomes this powerful anthem during the independence movement, and finally, in 1937, the first two stanzas are officially adopted as the national song.
Okay, pay attention, because this next part is absolutely central to her whole historical argument. It all comes down to one word, Sapka Koti. This phrase shows up in the longer version of the song, and it means 7 crores, which is 70 million. And you guessed it, that number wasn't random. It was the exact population of undivided Bengal at the time.
And that is the core of her argument right there. Based on that one word, Saptakoti, and the context of the novel it was in, she argues forcefully, look, let's be real, this song wasn't originally written for all of India, it was a song for Bengal.
So, after laying down the history, the speech pivots again. This time, it's a direct challenge to the ruling party's claim to be the sole guardians of the song. She basically questions whether they have a genuine connection to it at all.
And to back this up, she doesn't just make claims, she brings receipts. She tells these stories, anecdotes of what she calls hypocrisy. She points to a time a party spokesperson couldn't sing it on TV, a cabinet minister who struggled with the words, and even a protest that fell apart when the organizers reportedly couldn't sing the song themselves. She calls it all a badly scripted comedy.
And then, to really hammer the point home, she brings out this data. We're looking at records from the infamous cellular jail in Andaman, where so many freedom fighters were imprisoned. A whopping 68% of them were Bengali. Her point, Bengal, the birthplace of Vande Mataram, has paid its dues, and then some, in the fight for freedom.
All right, now we get to what is really the climax of the whole speech. This is the big takedown moment. Moitra takes the beautiful, poetic lines of the song and puts them side by side with cold, hard data about India today.
Let's start with water. The song has this gorgeous line, Sujalam Sufalam, which talks about beautiful, flowing waters. But then she contrasts that with this India ranking 120th out of 122 countries on the Water Quality Index, and a statistic that says over 70% of surface water is undrinkable.
Okay, next up, air. The song paints a picture of cool, fresh air. The reality she presents? A different story. She claims the government has let nearly 78% of thermal power plants off the hook from installing crucial anti-pollution systems. And then there's happiness. The song talks about being a giver of bliss, but she asks, how does that square with India's ranking of 118th in the World Happiness Report? It's a stark contrast she's trying to draw.
And to wrap up this whole lyrics versus reality section, she pulls out this table. It's a then and now comparison, looking at where India stood in 2014 versus today on things like press freedom, the gender gap, and global hunger. Her argument is pretty clear. Looking at these numbers, she contends things are moving in the wrong direction.
Okay, hold on because we're heading into the final act, and honestly, this might be the most dramatic part of the entire speech. She tackles the whole controversy about why we only sing a shortened version of Vande Mataram, and she aims to set the record straight once and for all.
So she starts by laying out the argument from the other side. A member of the ruling party claimed that it was India's first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who cut the song short. And the source for this? A book by a historian they named Sachi Bhattacharya.
And then she drops this bombshell. She flat out says there is no such book. And there's no historian with that name. He just doesn't exist.
So what happened? Well, she clarifies that there is a renowned historian who wrote a definitive book on Vande Mataram, but his name is Sabyasachi Bhattacharya. A small difference in spelling, maybe, but a massive difference in what the book actually says. And this is the big reveal. According to the actual historian's book, the person who advised shortening the song wasn't Nehru at all. It was, wait for it, Rabindranath Tagore, the very same person who first put the song to music. And she doesn't just say it, she provides the proof. She quotes directly from a letter Tagore wrote back in 1937. He explained that the later stanzas of the song are a direct hymn to the goddess Durga, and he argued that in a secular space, like Parliament, which is supposed to unite people of all faiths, that might not be appropriate. It was an argument for inclusivity. So, after all that, this speech leaves us all with a really big question to think about. When you take a national symbol, a song, a poem, anything, and drop it right into the middle of a political battlefield, what happens to its original meaning? And who really gets to decide what it stands for today? And that, right there, is what this whole firestorm is really all about.